Welcome to the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy e-learning program. Welcome back to another biology series. I'm Lenetta Clarke, your tutor for today. By the end of today's lesson, you would be able to explain how genetic variation arises, explain why genetic variation is important, and you should be able to differentiate between continuous and discontinuous variation. I would like to start by introducing you to some special members of my family. These are my four-legged friends. I had to bribe these four-legged felines with milk before they were willing to pose for a pic. So here are my uniquely named cats. So here we have Brown, Gray, and Kitty. Kitty is the offspring of Brown and Gray, who happen to be siblings, but you know, cats can get away with that. If you notice, each of these cats is different, and that is what we call variation. Variation is the differences in characteristics among members of the same species. So for example, even with one crop of tomatoes, you can see each tomato is different. Here are some chickens that I have. They're also very different. Each one has its own characteristic. The leaves on plants are different sizes, different shapes, and members of one family have different heights, different colors, different skin tones, different hair types, etc. So we can see variation among different members of a family. This results in differences in things like shapes, sizes, color, complexion, leaf length, leaf shape. In other words, variation creates diversity over a period of time. How does variation occur? We have two major causes of variation: sexual reproduction and mutation. During sexual reproduction, in particularly during meiosis, where we have crossing over and random assortment, we have intermingling and changing of genes resulting in different combination of alleles in an offspring. Also, because fertilization is quite random, we also end up with variations or differences in characteristics over time. Another major cause of variation is mutation. Mutations can be spontaneous, or they can be the result of exposure to radiation or some kind of chemical substance. So there are two major types of variations. We have chromosomal mutations. These affect the entire chromosomes. So sometimes you may end up with more than one chromosome in an offspring, or you may end up with one less chromosome, example like the case of Down syndrome. And we can have gene mutations which will result in various different types of diseases at a genetic level. So what does Nicki Minaj and the former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago have in common? These very cute dimples. That's a result of mutation. So dimples are a mutation of a particular gene. Earlobes are another example of mutated variations. Color of your hair, color of your skin tone, color of the fur on a domesticated dog. Those are all mutations which result in variation. Now, most mutations have no real effect on the survival of an offspring. So, for example, dimples doesn't really affect your ability to procreate or to find a mate or to find food. So some mutations are neutral. They have no major effect on the organism. Some mutations, however, result in the formation of diseases and can be seen as having a negative influence. Some of these diseases are Down syndrome, male pattern baldness, sickle cell anemia, prostate cancer, to name a few. So why is variation important? Variation increases your chances of survival and reproductive success should there be any changes in the environment. So for example, should the temperature of the water change? Should there be global warming? Should there be an introduction of a virus? Once you have a variation or variance in a particular species, then the chances of survival and therefore the ability to procreate increases. So for example, if there was a disease wiping out a specific variety of coconuts, without variation, all the coconuts would be wiped out. However, variation could produce resistant strains which would not succumb to the disease, and you will have healthy coconuts which would avoid being wiped out by that particular disease. In this season of the global pandemic, we may have some persons who are immune to the COVID-19 virus due to genetic variations. So those persons will not succumb to the disease as a result of variation within the human population. So we have two types of variation: continuous and discontinuous variation. Continuous variation is demonstrated when a characteristic has a wide range of values. For example, height, weight, skin color, stem thickness, and shape or size of the ripe fruit. So for example, height. If you were to take the heights of all the children in your class, you would see very, very short persons, and you would have very, very tall persons. And you would have a range of heights in between. If we were to put that data onto a bar graph, we will end up with a bell curve. And that is a characteristic of continuous variation. However, in discontinuous variation, we have distinct categories. There are no ranges and there are no in-betweens. So for example, blood groups. You are either blood group A, blood group B, blood group AB, or blood group O. There are no range or in-betweens between A and B. Also, eye color. In our society, we have dark brown, we have light brown, we may even have black eye color, but there are no other ranges in between. Fingerprints. You can have an arch fingerprint or whirlpool fingerprint, for example, and no in-betweens. Number of wings. An insect can have 6 wings. Some other organisms may have 4 wings. And sex. You are either female or male. There are no ranges and very distinct categories in discontinuous variation. So as we come to the end of this session, I have some homework for you. Very simple. Select a plant in or around your home. Identify 30 random leaves and measure their lengths from apex to the top of the petiole. Determine an appropriate range of lengths between the shortest and the longest leaves. Count the frequency of the leaves for each range. So for example, if your shortest leaf is 5 centimeters and your longest leaf is 20 centimeters, and highly likely you will have natural or whole numbers like that. You'll probably have fractions, but for simplicity of explanation, I would use whole numbers. You would determine a range. For my example, I'm going to use 5 centimeters intervals. So 5 centimeters to 9 centimeters would be one range. 10 centimeters to 14 centimeters would be another range of 5, and so forth until 20 centimeters. Then you are going to just simply count how many leaves fall between 5 to 9 centimeters. So let's say there are only 4. Then you will count how many leaves fall between 10 to 14 centimeters. Maybe there are 12. and so forth until you have gotten to your final range. Finally, construct a bar graph to represent your data. At the end of the activity, you should be able to describe the graph and finally state what type of variation does length of leaves demonstrate. Thank you for sticking and staying to the end. Be sure to join the next session where we talk about natural selection. Thank you and stay safe.